Hey, look, just real quick, for all of you in California dealing with these wildfires, I want you to know that without a doubt, 100%, this is the fault of the Democrats you elected. Because there are 4 actions taken by the Democrats that are directly responsible for why you're enduring this wildfire. The first being your state stopped clearing the brush. They didn't want to spend state money anymore on maintaining and clearing the brush that starts these wildfires, and they figured they would save money by not doing it, and then after the wildfire, they would get federal funding to take care of all the emergency stuff. They have just decided that it's cheaper on the state to not prevent them from happening, and after they happen, use federal FEMA funds to take care of it. Reason number 2 why you're enduring these wildfires is your mayor in LA decided to cut firefighter funding by $17.5 million. Now, it's less than what she wanted to cut. She wanted to cut $23 million. But yeah, she cut $17.5. Oh, and she took that money plus an additional $4 million and spent it on taking care of illegal immigrants. See, the mayor of LA decided to spend $21.8 million taking care of those people. And she was able to get most of that money from the fire department. Lastly, our government has taken money from fire departments all throughout the United States and spent them fully equipping and fully funding 16 Ukrainian fire departments. Those fire departments have reported to international media that they are fully equipped and ready for any emergency. So if you're wondering why you're dealing with these wildfires, it's because your fucking state stopped clearing the brush. Your mayor in LA cut $17.5 million of your funding and spent all that money on illegal immigrants. And all around the country, we've taken money from fire departments to make sure Ukraine is fully equipped for any emergency. Thank God it's less than 2 weeks till we have to stop dealing with this dumb shit. Except for those of you in California, you re-elected the Democrats. So
the Department of Water and Power failed to fill the reservoir. And to make matters worse, no reservoirs have been built in California since 1979. This despite the fact that California taxpayers have demanded more water retention and even voted to tax themselves to get it. That money reportedly is sitting unspent. So far, Governor Newsom and his Democrat bureaucrats have done nothing to retain the millions of acre-feet of water. What about all the water they already do have? Well, here's President-elect Trump a few months back on the Joe Rogan show explaining exactly what's going on.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous. That
water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen.
Yeah.
That, are
Now, it will be no surprise to you that President-elect Trump is calling on gruesome Newsom to resign. Quote, one of the most beautiful parts of the United States of America is burning to the ground. Its ashes, and Gavin Newsom should resign. This is all his fault. Elon Musk seconded that call for Newsom to resign. As for his part, here's what gruesome Newsom had to say when asked about the water shortage.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
Yeah, the locals are going to have to figure it out. The locals will have to figure it out. Yep. The second largest city in the nation is burning to the ground, and it's the locals. They're the ones that are going to have to figure all this out. You know, like LA's mayor and fire chief, the locals.
And you've talked about the forest fires. Now we're permitting and cleaning up these forests so it will reduce the threat of forest fire as well as creating jobs in these communities.
We're all to do that in California, by the way.
Yes, sir.
California's a mess. We're giving billions and billions of dollars for forest fires in California. There's no reason for those fires to be like they are. They're leaving them dirty. It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry. And instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them. And we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for to fix. And the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests because it's disgraceful. What's happening should never happen. I go all over the country and I meet with governors. The first thing they say is there's no reason for forest fires like that in California. So I say to the governor, or whoever's going to be the governor of California, you better get your act together, because California, we're just not going to continue to pay the kind of money that we're paying because of fires that should never be to the extent. They were telling me in a couple of states, I won't even mention their name, it's like a flash. Some grass will burn. It'll be over in minutes. They'll lose 2 acres, 3 acres at the most. They won't even lose that. And here we are with thousands of acres and billions of dollars every year. It's the same thing every year. And they don't want to clean up their forests because they have environmental problems in cleaning it up. It should be the opposite, because you're going to lose your forests. You're losing them. But it's costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars because of incompetence in California. So the people, I'm speaking now for the people of California, they don't want to see this happen. They're getting destroyed. And it's hurting our budgets. It's hurting our country. Something I feel so strongly about. You can knock this down to nothing. You know, you go to Europe and different places in Europe, countries where they're forest countries, and they're very, very strong on management, and they don't have a problem. They really don't have, with, as they say, more explosive trees than we have in California. So,
to see specifically done on the issue of forest management, and is it possible that it's also forest management and climate change? It's both things.
Well, I think something's possible. I think a lot of things are possible. But with regard to the forests, when trees fall down after a short period of time, about 18 months, they become very dry. They become really like a matchstick. And they get up, you know, there's no more water pouring through, and they become very, very, they just explode. They can explode. Also, leaves. When you have years of leaves, dried leaves on the ground, it just sets it up. It's really a fuel for a fire. So they have to do something about it. They also have to do cuts. I mean, people don't like to.
All right, I think we get the gist of what Trump is saying. In my opinion, this is true leadership. He's getting to the bottom of what is happening.
Now, for us, I think there are 2 major takeaways from all of this. First and foremost, this incompetence that we see spread all throughout this tragedy is actually baked into the cake of woke progressive liberalism. It's a phenomenon known as bio-Leninism. You might want to write that down. It's a cool term. We've talked about it before. Bio-Leninism. It's the notion that cultural Marxism inevitably promotes the least qualified people into positions of leadership and thereby guarantees its own demise by virtue of incompetence. So, whereas traditional Leninism, Soviet Leninism, promoted adherence through the ranks by virtue of their ideological fidelity to Marxism, bio-Leninism, rooted in identity politics, promotes its members not on the basis of incompetence or ideological conformity, but instead on the basis of one's identity and the resemblance one has to victim classes, how many boxes you can check off. And so bio-Leninism inevitably ends up enthroning and enshrining as leaders those least qualified to lead. And that's because competence is no longer a qualification for promotion. And so bio-Leninism inevitably suffers from a competency crisis, precisely because competency has been replaced by identity as the primary screening procedure for positions of leadership. Does that not perfectly summarize the leadership of LA and California and the Democrat presidential nominee? I mean, the whole of it. And so with these fires, we're witnessing right before our very eyes the woke world that bio-Leninism built simply imploding in on itself, as that implosion is actually baked into the cake of the incompetency that pervades the system.